We have three different groups of speakers, and we will start with health services. So Matthew, with very little preamble, there we go. Are you ready to walk us through your budget?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Brennan, Director of Public Health for the town of Foxborough. I'm going to share my screen with you just so we can walk through the budget so it's easier. Here we go. So this is, our operational budget for the year. The health department were charged with improving the quality of life in the town. This budget takes into consideration, which was split into two, the ARC funding. So we kind of had two budgets before. Now this is kind of compressed into one. So there is a little bit of change in this year's, but not too much. It's only because they were combined. But basically, we don't have a significant change from what we previously have spent. It's actually an overall decrease of 1.5%. And I will get into the specifics of it. I'm just going to scroll down. For accomplishments this year, even though these are not, here in my budget, these were things that we provided to the town as part of the funding. One thing is we were awarded a $5,000 grant, which we provided to the Hockomock Area YMCA, and that helped give food to housing authority populations, or town of Foxborough Housing Authority population, to fight food insecurity within their housing. So we gave that money as part of a grant to them to feed the people and keep those services moving forward. Also, we created the COVID-19 dashboard with COVID-19 funds that we received from the state. Those COVID-19 funds basically keep the town, provides the town with the dashboard. And the dashboard is a way for us to, keep the town up to date with all the recent changes in COVID data. We are able to look online and update the data, it goes to the website instantaneously. So we have found that is easy for us. It's an added cost, but we believe in the world of COVID. It definitely is a benefit to the town. We were also awarded a public health excellence grant. That is a $200,000 grant. And that, as part of that, we partner with the towns of Easton, Mansfield, Norton, Plainville, and Sharon to kind of bolster the public health services we already have. And also, we performed a health assessment on the town this year, which if you go to the health department website, you can see a new health assessment that was performed, which is great information for the community to see. And overall, Foxborough has pretty good health.
Hey, Matthew, before you page down, just two
Sure.
things. One, are those grants, do you think, going to be recurring?
So the $5,000 one, no. But the 200,000, yeah. So the public health excellence grant, we're hoping to have it for about 10 years. It can be up to $300,000 a year. Right now, we are planning on having two inspectors. One, a housing inspector, and another would be a food inspector to help out each of those communities, as needed. And again, this is just to bolster our current services and to help the communities out. The state is trying to increase public health services across the state. And these shared service arrangements are one way that they're doing that. And all future grant money, we believe, is going to be, given to these shared service arrangements. So by us being in this and actually, driving it here with this grant, we believe, Foxborough will be in a good place for the future.
So that's
Matthew,
great. Oh, go ahead.
Matthew, sorry.
question.
Who manages these people?
So we are working on the intermunicipal agreement right now. And actually that will go to the town selectmen and the Board of Health relatively soon, by the way, because I think it's going to have to be approved. But basically, one individual will be appointed by the Board of Health within each community to be on an advisory board. And the money will be, each community will have a vote, and the money that goes through it and the hiring process will all be determined through that advisory group.
Got it. Thank you.
So in addition to the COVID postings, I believe you also had a new software program implemented to make food inspections more efficient. Maybe you can take a moment to explain that.
Yeah, so, previously, the town received a grant for Food Code Pro and Housing Code Pro, which are inspectional software. And, the inspectional software, it's an added price, but at the same time, it's a great benefit for our inspectors. And in this budget, you'll see reflected that, we have added it into our budget. I think it's about $3,000 or $4,000 that's added into the budget. It would be more of a reoccurring expense for the town, but I've tried to re-budget and move the budget around in a way where, we could sustain it. Because moving forward, this is the way, the town, we have, electronic permitting services, and we have, most towns are moving to these electronic inspectional services as well. And they'll be funded that way through grants. And this is kind of, we're trying to keep up with the times and the way things are moving. And we believe that, the software systems and will actually be integrated with the state at one point. So we're just trying to keep up. So by adding this software, we believe we'll be more productive. It's needed in the department, but I don't think there's much impact either. But we can get into that.
Yeah. Matthew, I think this idea of the grant is a great step forward for the Commonwealth. So many cities and towns in particular, are severely underfunded for their public health departments. And everyone tries to do the best they can with very, very limited resources. Starting to do this and recognizing to do this as a shared resource across multiple towns, and then the state increasingly now can fund the shared resources, is going to raise all boats, I think, for public health. So this has been talked about for many years, and I'm glad to see it's finally happening, and Foxborough will benefit.
Yeah, I believe so. And some of the things that, that we can't get to, because, right now the department's very responsive to complaints and other things. But, sometimes routine inspections have to fall behind because of the workload. And this is a way to really keep up with the establishments that, we can't keep up with, or the establishments that the temporary events and other things that we can't fit into a normal schedule will have help, to fit it in. But basically, our budget, I'm the director of public health. We have a public health coordinator, Diane, a sanitarian, Kevin, and a health inspector that we recently hired. So, and his name is Cameron. So our salaries have actually gone down recently, since since I joined the department. Oh, I apologize. This is sideways. Since I joined the department, the health director salary has gone down. Let me see if I can. I apologize for this. That the health inspector salary has gone down. The health director's salary has gone down. So the town has saved the money. With the positions, which has actually, you can see right there, it's a negative 3% for the salaries. So that's where some of the savings is coming in. Also, let's see.
Matthew, I just pulled
Sure.
up the file. Would it be easier if I shared?
Absolutely.
Just you're gonna have to I cannot screen. Okay, if you could unshare. It's denying me at the moment. Says I'm still viewing your desktop.
Sorry,
That's all right. Oh, that looks good. No, not yet.
oh,
Well, if you want to pull it back up, I mean, there's only 2 pages to it, right?
I'm trying not to get away from sharing, and it's not working.
Usually there's a red button at the top just to the right that says, oh, there we go. So, me.
Oh, did you get it? Thank you.
Okay. Let me know if you can, that's in a bad place. Let me know if you can see that.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So just tell me when and where to roll.
Sure. As you can see, health director salary has gone down a little since my predecessor retired. The inspector position, we were thinking about hiring an assistant director, but in the end, we hired someone as an inspector. That way we could train them to become the assistant. So that salary went down as well. The department administrator salary is, just regular step increases. So it's gone down a little bit. Monitoring testing services, that's our annual rabies clinic. So there's not a lot of funds there, and that's level funded. Consultation services, that's actually our underage tobacco inspections. So we would definitely like to keep that level funded, to keep that in the budget. Some things that I did raise, postage and advertising, printing, that the cost of these has gone up. Postage, it's $8 for a certified mail. And for me to do anything legally, I have to send it out certified. So, the postage pricing is expensive for my department. Printing services, because there has been turnover, we're expecting, new business cards as well as new inspectional reports and other things to be purchased. So, that's why that was raised. The other purchase services there, which is a big amount, the $9,700, that is just the ARC of South of Norfolk. So that isn't anything new or something that were purchased. That's funds from another account that were just transferred there. So that's nothing new. Office supplies, we raised a little bit. We're a department. We don't just get office supplies. We get thermometers and flashlights and other things. Not to mention, just the price of toner alone is expensive. So we upped that a little bit. And you'll see we added that separate line item for inspectional software. Like I said, before it was a grant, and before I really moved forward, after the grant. I want to make sure that I had the town on board to keep that software budget there, because it's going to be a reoccurring item from here on it out. So that's $4,300 that we believe is well spent. And then in-state travel, that's very minimal. That's our time in inspections if the town car isn't available, or to different learning events or anything else that we have to go to. Meeting and conferences, that's for us to keep up our CEUs, for our licenses to perform the work, and then the dues and membership to our professional organization. So other department expenses that raised, and that is for that's for the software in order to do the dashboard. I'd like to provide those services to the town to show in real time the data of the health data of the population, whether it be COVID or anything else that comes out, and that expense there is how we do it, and that's basically the budget in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please let me know.
I mean, as COVID hopefully winds down, what else might be in the dashboard, Matthew?
So this is the dashboard right now is just COVID numbers, and as it winds down, yes, it might not be used as much, but then I believe that could be turned into other things. So if we don't want to put COVID numbers out there, we could graph anything. I found out through the community health assessment, some of the things that Foxborough has high results of is breast cancer. That's high. Childhood asthma, believe it or not, lung cancer. So, these are ways that you can just kind of put these graphs and data out there to show, this is where the state is at, this is where Foxborough is at, and be able to change the numbers, frequently. So it's a tool that the town can use to display things, to its residents. And we believe, in public health that's valuable. It's, if the town wants to pay for it, but, with the decrease in the overall spending, and the way the budget worked out, we believe it's safe to kind of keep in there for this year.
And they can get to that dashboard just right on the main Town of Foxborough page still. There used to be a splash button right at the top.
Correct.
Okay.
It's still there.
It's still there. Okay.
Right. So Matthew, how are we doing these days with the virus? What's the positivity rate looking like?
So the positivity rates for this week, they actually come out tomorrow, but I can tell you as of today, the 14-day case counts have cut in half. So, I think last week they were in the 200s. This week they're about 114 for the 2-week case count. And a week from now, we're hoping that they're cut in half again. So we're definitely on the downslope of this Omicron virus, and we believe we're going to continue in that direction.
Great. Thank you.
So I don't have any other questions about the budget. And I can't see everybody's face in this panel view, but I thought, Matthew, before you wrap up, and then, if anybody else has questions, talk a little about ARC and what it is, because we have some very new members on the committee.
Yeah, so ARC of Norfolk County is basically, it's a program that helps, people with disabilities, autism and learning disabilities. And it's basically run support programs and other programs to support them. and that's where the money goes to. It will be outlined in the town report. They actually submit to us basically what they use the money for, and we add that in the annual report every single year. And it is quite a bit of services, offered to the town of Foxborough for the money that we give them.
That's great. All right. Any other questions from the group? Oh, Rafaela, do I need to pull that back up? You're on mute, Rafaela. I see your hand.
Mute. Okay,
There we
is that
go.
better? Okay.
Yes.
I just had a quick question on APHVC. What does that stand for? I have no idea.
That's the Academic Public Health Volunteer Corps. So that is
Oh.
basically, academic universities, BU, UMass Amherst,
Okay.
Northeastern. It's a group of students, teachers, volunteers who are really giving their time to public health, in order to help out.
So they're creating the assessments for the individual towns or help create the
Yeah, so
assessment.
this was something that I asked them to do as a new director of public health. I really wanted to know a bench point for the town of Foxborough. Where am I starting and what things do I need to look at within the town to make, a better health outcome in certain populations? And that's why I asked them to do it. And there's a lot of good information on it. So if you haven't seen it, I suggest, you go to the health department webpage and you can find it there. And there's a lot of great information. They did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much for meeting with us, Matthew, and walking through that. It's great work y'all do.
Thank you.
And we are going to pivot directly to human services. I see you there, Mark. Do you have a slideshow or something you can share?
Yes, I do. Yeah, let me share my screen here.
One thing is I didn't, I know it's sort of implicit in your slides, but if you could talk a little bit about the recent changes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That's actually slide number 2. So that's perfect timing.
All right.
So for those who don't know me, my name is Mark Craig. I am the Director of Human Services for the town of Foxborough. I'm joined by Ali Rodriguez, who's the Director of Veteran Services, as well as Renee Tosi, who is the Recreation Division Director. So as was alluded to, some recent changes that are happening with the town of Foxborough. So there's been some reorganization. So we're now one United Human Services Department, and this is sort of our organizational chart. So you can see it's the town manager, the assistant town manager, then me. Sorry, sometimes I talk really fast. So I'm going to try and slow it down a little bit. And you can sort of see our former divisions. We have the Council on Aging Human Services, that's marked by that teal blue color, the Recreation Division marked by that darker blue, and then the Veterans Division, which is marked by the gray. So Ali and Renee are both leading their respective departments, continuing their normal daily operations. And obviously the normal daily operations are still continuing here at the Senior Center, but we're taking sort of a more unified approach with the department as a whole. And this has been going on for a total of about 3 weeks now. So we're still getting used to policies, procedures, working through all the kinks, and making sure that by the time July 1st comes, we are a well-oiled machine. So one thing I think is pretty interesting is when you look at our department as a whole, we have a lot of alternative funding sources, which I'll talk about later in our slide presentation. It's not all general fund, and I'm pretty proud of that. So I'm going to lead right into what happens at the daily operations here at the Foxborough Senior Center. So if you'll indulge me for a few minutes. One of the most important things we have is the past year we had vaccination. So this is the very first vaccine we did a little bit over a year ago. That's Millie Green, the COA chairperson, advisory chairperson, getting the very first vaccine in Foxborough. We actually beat a lot of the seniors up at Gillette. We had it here at the Senior Center first, the first vaccinations. We had hundreds of people who got vaccinated at the Senior Center. And then through the Foxborough Fire Department, Tom Kenvin, unbelievable. Greatly appreciated him and Corey, able to vaccinate people at the Senior Center as well as Foxborough Housing. In addition to that, we had a whole host of series of programs. My main goal for this past year was to continue to engage seniors. As you probably can imagine, we had a lot of seniors who were very lonely. Certainly for 2020, they were at home for a long period of time. Their health deteriorated. In 2021, we wanted to get people back out there, engaging in activities as safely as we possibly could. I'm trying not to jinx it. I'll knock on wood. We're going on 2 years without a single community transmission of COVID-19 at the Foxborough Senior Center. We've had people come in the building who, inevitably have been COVID positive, but through our protocols, absolutely zero transmission. We're
Amazing.
currently in a mask mandate at the senior center. We went back about mid-November for protection. Probably my most proud moment of 2021 is, again, zero COVID transmission. So we have a whole host of programs. The way we get advertisement out to the community is through a lots of different ways, but one of the most notable is our GEM newsletter. So every month I produce a 12-page kind of magazine quality newsletter that is program descriptions, costs, and at the end is a basic calendar. This gets emailed out, it's printed. We have copies all over town. That's our main method of communication with the community. So this is because it's council on aging and human services. It's not just senior programs. We also highlight our human services services well. For that, we do a lot of services. And for those that are watching at home, it's not just seniors. We have a lot of people that are 18 plus who come in looking for access to housing, just sort of navigating complicated systems. We are incredibly blessed to have Pam McGuire sort of helping people navigate through the community, navigate these really, really complicated systems, unemployment, housing, SNAP applications. We have a new community social worker who's starting in a few weeks, Kate Finnery. It's a great way for people in the community who might need help trying to figure out what their next step in life is. They meet with Pam or soon to be Kate to figure out how they can actually get to whatever they need and the resources around them. As you can imagine, with the fire we had in early December, we had a lot of families come out to us. We were able to help them with whatever they needed. And we still have some ongoing cases from that, but we're trying to the best we can to get people in permanent housing too. So we do a lot of that. I really want to highlight that because that always seems to be the misnomer because it's a senior center. Sometimes people don't get to us until it's almost too late when they're, in their 30s and they realize, oh, this is the place I should go to. So whenever I have the opportunity to, I want to really highlight that. But through the year, we had a lot of fun too. A lot of activities, a lot of events. I love events. We had a lot of outside activities. We had a 20 by 60 foot tent. So I think we started back in April. Programs were basically outside from April until late October, trying to get people outside as engaged as much as possible. And that way also people felt a little bit more comfortable too. Again, we brought the masks back. Some of our programs did have to get canceled because things like chorus, we're just not going to be singing in masks. So we're patiently waiting to a safe period of time where we can get back into the senior center without masks. But until then, we're kind of just continuing our normal daily operation. So our daily attendance has dropped a little bit. It's definitely increased compared to 2020. We're not at our 2019 numbers yet, but I can easily see as we move forward, more people are coming back to the senior center. For some of them, 2 years ago, they said, well, we'll see you when it's over. And then a year ago, they said, well, we'll see you when it's over. And now they're kind of saying, I'm just going to start coming back. They realize the risk, but it's the risk is better than the reward is better than the risk. So I know that was a lot just in a little bit. I'm actually going to turn it over to Allie to talk about Foxborough Veteran Services. And Allie, just let me know when you want me to get to the next slide.
Hi, good evening. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So my name is Allie Rodriguez. I am the Director of Veteran Services. I've been in this role since January of 2019. Absolutely love my job. I love what I do for Foxborough. I love the veteran community in Foxborough. We have just the best veterans anywhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I'm just so proud that they come to me daily and they trust me with their VA claims and their monetary benefits. Mark, next slide, please. So this is just a little bit of the programs and the services that I run. I do, and my assistant, Lauren, she's a new hire. She was the admin assistant in Middleborough, and then I snagged her up because she's really good. So now Foxborough is lucky to have her as well. So one of the programs that I mostly focus on is the mass annuity for 100% service-connected disability. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we are the only state in the union that does this, the Commonwealth will pay you $2,000 if you are 100% permanent and total or 100% service-connected with unemployability. You get $2,000 a year just for being 100% service-connected. Nobody else in the country does that. And that's often a benefit that gets left on the table because veterans just don't know. So when I meet a veteran and they tell me they're 100%, I always ask immediately, do you get your tax abatement and do you get your annuity? And a lot of times they say no. So imagine my joy when I'm like, oh my gosh, let me do this for you. And then they walk out all happy because I just got them an extra $2,000 a month. I also do a lot of, as everybody knows, a lot of patriotic ceremonies, Veterans Day, Memorial Day. I also hold a 24-hour POW MIA vigil, and that's on the Common. And that's really special. I think it was just 10 years ago. It was started by a Boy Scout or an Eagle Scout, and we've just continued the tradition. The Patriot Riders come out, a lot of the community members come out, and they hold vigil for us, an hour, 2 hours, and it goes all the way overnight. And we don't let the flame die, and we remember those who did not come home. Also, we do a lot of VA home loans, just a lot of education, suicide prevention, mental health is huge in my office. I'm constantly calling veterans, hey, how you doing? Veterans know that when they leave my office, that's not the end of the transaction, so to speak. They can call my office anytime. A lot of them have my personal cell phone number, and they know that if they are in crisis, they know to reach out to me. Mark, next slide, please. So Chapter 115 is technically the reason that VSOs exist. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it is actually written in Massachusetts General Law. Chapter 115 states that every city and town will be represented by a VSO. Massachusetts is the only state in the union that does this also, Chapter 115 benefit. Currently, the town of Foxborough has 20 active recipients. To be eligible for the Chapter 115 benefit, the veteran and the widow must meet a bunch of criteria. So Chapter 115 program is really for indigent veterans. There is a cap on income and asset, and it varies if it's a single person or if it's a couple. Things taken into consideration is the size of the home, the size of the lot, assets, mutual funds, Roth IRAs, their retirement funds, if they have life insurance. So everything is taken into consideration. It's put into a formula. It gets sent up to Boston to the Department of Veteran Services, and then DVS is the one who approves or denies. It is not my job to deny, but it is my job to screen and verify that the veteran or the widow is eligible. We reimburse things like prescriptions, co-pays, dental procedures, fuel costs. I think that's about it. We do burials also. If a family cannot afford a burial, Chapter 115 will cover the burial. In 2019, 2020, I can't see here because my stuff is blocking the way. I'm sorry. So in 2020, the town of Foxborough distributed $173,658 in Chapter 115 funds. In 2021, that jumped to $195,752. However, because this is a state mandate, the town will receive 75% of that number. So really the town only pays out 25% of anything going out to Chapter 115. Mark, next slide. So this is just a little bit of what we did this year. The top left, that was the Heritage Museum field trip out in Hudson. A couple of veterans joined us. And if you haven't been to the Heritage Museum, I highly suggest it. It's from the Civil War all the way up to the global war on terrorism. And they have tanks and they have a missile there, and you can walk through the trenches of World War II. It's absolutely incredible. The veterans really loved it. The next photo is my veterans group, and we have a couple of veterans missing, but we just get together the first and third Monday of each month, and we sit there and we talk about our service, or sometimes I will bring in a guest speaker if I feel the program is beneficial. Next, you see Officer Jimmy Parra. That's the coats for troops. All of the police departments in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts got in their police cruisers, turned on their lights and sirens, and paraded onto Gillette and filled the cruisers with tons of Home Depot buckets. And inside those buckets were coats, masks, hand sanitizers. There was some snack, a couple of bottles of water, a couple of suicide prevention cards, the crisis line cards, just a bunch of resources that veterans can use later on. And then you see me with Mr. Craft. That was Memorial Day. I was actually honored enough to get a phone call and they said, "Hey, Mr. Kraft, would love to do the memorial thing with you. Why don't you come out?" And I was just, of course, I was giddy, right? Because who doesn't love Mr. Kraft and the Kraft Group? And I was able to place that wreath on there, and they are just so good to my office, and I just appreciate everything they do for us. They also did the Hometown Heroes banners for Veterans Day. If you saw that, if you were at Gillette Stadium, you saw a bunch of local heroes that were featured on their banners. And then on the very, very far, you see that gentleman with the Scully cap and the orange shirt. That is Paralympian Joel Hunt. He was our Veterans Day speaker. He is a combat wounded veteran, was in an IED explosion, and then started adaptive skiing. The Paralympics called him, said, "Why don't you come ski for us?" So he skied for the Paralympics in Sochi in a couple of years ago. We know when the last Paralympics are. And I was able enough to snag him, and that's him speaking at the Sage School, where he was so engaged with the children. They asked tons of questions, and it was amazing that we were able to get him. Mark, next slide, please.
That is actually it, Allie.
Oh, that's it? Okay.
Yeah,
So if anybody has any questions real quick, I don't mind answering, as long as the questions are easy.
Let's, can we hold off on questions and we'll get back to them once we do budget?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's do
Okay,
it.
that sounds good. Next, I'm going to introduce Renee Tosi, maybe for the first time publicly on TV, as the Recreation Division Director. So Renee, take it away. Same thing, I'll advance the slides whenever you need me to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mark. So I have actually worked in the department now for 6.5 years. I started out as a program coordinator. Actually, I started as a counselor, then a program coordinator, up to assistant director, and now I am the director of the Recreation Division. I am super excited for the merger with Mark and Allie. It has been the best 3.5 weeks. It hasn't been long, but it's been great. I really absolutely love my job. I'm passionate about what I do. And my whole goal over the course of the past couple of years has been to just basically bring some normalcy back for the kids here in our community and the families. And we were able to do that last year slowly, and it's slowly getting back up to where we want to be. I think our biggest success last year was that we got to bring back our Booth Summer program. The kids were beyond happy to be back. We had to do things with restrictions. We had some, lower numbers or whatnot, but the summer program was back. And then coming into this fall, we did all of our sports programs. You can do the next slide. I'm sorry, Mark.
Okay.
We added many new programs, but we did most of our sports programs ran not quite to full capacity because we wanted to keep the numbers small with the COVID situation. But we brought in acoustic guitar was new. We have a couple new yoga classes. Our candlelight restorative yoga is phenomenal over at the chapel. We're doing hiking classes. We have learned to run a 5K. So there's been many great programs to get kids and families and adults involved. I think one of our newest programs that we ran was the Egg My Yard. And we did a Halloween one and we did a Easter one. And at about 5:30 in the morning, we went out and put eggs. You could sign up for the program and we would hide eggs throughout your front lawn. Rather than doing a community egg hunt, we figured we'd do it right on your front lawn. The Halloween one was in place of our normal trunk or treat or the Halloween parade type of thing. They were huge successes. Everybody loved doing it. It was actually comical. People's sprinklers went off. Dogs came out barking at us. People's lights went on, but it was still, we had a really good time doing that. Next slide, Mark. So this is just, a couple of the pictures of there's one with our new playground and all the kids on it. That was a huge success this summer with the Booth program. And there's a picture. So we also did front yard pictures with the bunny because we couldn't do a breakfast with the bunny or something on the lines of that. So we had families signed up and we had the bunny would come to your front yard or your front porch and we would do your family picture with the bunny. So that's that picture over there. The next one over where the kids are climbing on the rock wall, we were able to bring back field trips, which was huge. I actually have coming up in February, a February vacation camp. We call it Recreation Camp. And we're going to do 3 field trips with that. So it's been great to be able to bring back some of those field trips as well. At the bottom is the someone using their scooter at our skate park, which is actually in the process of, we are starting to look into rebuilding that. It's needed some help, and it's fully going to be funded by a group at the skate park, the Friends of Skate Park. They've started a GoFundMe, and they're all gung-ho to get that going. Next over is our field hockey program, which is one of our biggest programs. Melissa Baderi runs that. She's also the high school coach, and she's really built this great feeder program for the high school program. So those are just some of our things. I'm looking to do a lot more middle school programs coming up. We have a lot of field trips coming up for the middle school. I'm going to try and do one each month. We started with Neshoba Valley Tubing, and that was a huge success. I think our next one is going to be to Helix, and then the middle schoolers are also allowed to come to the February vacation camp. And our youngest kids are our Little Wreckers, and that's for our preschoolers. And that drop-off program, again, I've kept it small. We used to have 12 kids in the program. We're keeping it down to 8 right now for the winter. But come summer, we're going to open it back up to 12 kids because we'll be able, or spring at least, because we'll be able to be outside. Next slide, or is that my last?
That's actually it.
That was it?
Yeah. Yeah, so I wanted to show you guys this because, one, we like publicity, as we're sort of anytime we can get some forward-facing time with people watching from TV, maybe we can get them to engage with us, whether the rec department or veterans or down here at the senior center. But also, too, because, I know that you're doing this for all the departments, but we're sort of the non-traditional departments, right? We're very forward-facing. Not that other departments are boring, that's all I'm saying, but we have a lot of things going on. And I wanted, before we get into the kind of just the numbers game, I think it's important to show the daily operations, because we're not like, the building department where they're processing building permits. This is what they do every single day. Every single day for us is completely different. The things that Renee sees tomorrow is completely different from 3 weeks from now. So I thought that was really important to get that in front of you, to explain kind of what our daily operations are. Other thing I think is very important is that alternative funding that I talked about earlier. This is something that also makes us very unique. We have donations, $15,000 worth of donations, $138,000 worth of grants. Friends of groups. Renee has one for the Friends of Recreation. I have one for the Friends of the Foxborough Seniors. And then we also get funds through Partners in Patriotism too. That on top of our revolving funds, we have the COA trips and programs, the human services, the community events, and then Renee has the large recreation revolving fund too. So it's our way of doing a lot of our programs are not through general fund. Everything pretty much comes from revolving funds. But with that, I'll get into our Human Services General Fund. So the very first thing you'll see is I won't go line by line, but I'll highlight some of the changes. So as you can see, actually I'll go back. You can see that our department is one large department. It has been combined into one, where you can see the FY23 requests. I highlighted that for you. So if you're looking along, and you can also see that while there's still a little division, you can see that the top box has been the traditional Foxborough Senior Center, the middle box is Veteran Services, and then the bottom is Recreation. Next year, more than likely, those things will be a little bit more combined, where you'll only see one line of longevity, and you'll see that in expenses too. So I'm going to kind of go through kind of the major changes in salaries. The two biggest ones are, we had Elaine Repoff, who was our department administrator here at the Senior Center for 21 years, retired. With that, we hired a new person, Kristen Pellerin, who actually worked for me over in Randolph for a number of years. We were able to bring her over here. And obviously, when you go from a retirement to a new employee, you have a cost savings to the town too. So that was in excess of $9,000. And very similarly with Deb Giordino retiring from the Recreation Division, and then Renee coming in, when you have someone who's been here for so many years and the new person coming in, it is a cost savings to the town. So just salary line items alone, those two employees did save the town close to $25,000. So that's the salaries, but then we also had to make this might have looked a little confusing, to separate in this COA Human Services. To make it a little bit easier, we had other departmental staff, I never really loved that because it's multiple people. I'd rather have single lines for employees. So we separated it out. So it didn't make it look like we had an $87,000 employee. We had one employee who's making $30,000, who's our part-time person, and then a community caseworker, the $59,000, which actually that number more than likely will go down for FY24 because we're going to have a new person in that position too. So just if that was a question, I just wanted to answer that now. For expenses, I'm going to kind of go through our major changes. One thing that on the top budget you'll see is that Council on Aging Human Services, the traditional senior center budget. One thing I do every year is I really evaluate where we spent the money. I'm not in favor of just sort of requesting the same amount this year, next year, the year after that. I'd rather look at our expenses, project out a year ahead and see, maybe we aren't going to need so much in postage. Maybe we're going to need more because we're doing something else. So our office maintenance went up by $2,000 because some of our equipment is getting older. We need to really compensate for new programs going on here. Additionally, other professional services went up. I'm hoping to do a lot more professional groups here at the senior center. Traditionally, that's funded a domestic violence support group that meets here once a week, but I'd like to do more. We wanted to offer more support groups to the community. And then you can also see that gasoline went down. I know this is something that's been talked about in other budgets. That was a zeroed out line item that was then added to its own separate fund that's not through individual departments. And then office supplies, we went up by $1,000 to compensate for rising costs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allie to talk about the differences in her department, in her division too.
Not much. I'm only asking for mental supplies. So that's cost of flags. I do order flags for all the graves for Memorial Day. So Rock Hill and St. Mary's Cemetery. The flags that are provided do come through my office, and the cost, and I buy them the most inexpensive, and it's through MassCorps, Massachusetts Corrections. They are the one that make our flags, and their prices increased, and I buy no less than $5,000 worth of flags a year. So I'm asking for that. And then ordinary benefits are Chapter 115. It did increase. Prices of prescriptions went up. Fuel. We also we reimburse for Medicaid, Medicare. That went up. And so it's got to be covered, right? So I'm asking for just a little bit of increase in that. And then special department expenses, that's for my events. I do want to reinvest in, let's say, the wreaths that we lay at the memorials on Memorial Day on the Common, and the catering. And I do want to revamp Veterans Day, and I do want to really build up POW MIA Day, and as well as Armed Forces Day, Gold Star Family Day. And Gold Stars are family members who have lost a service member while on active duty. Either they were killed in an accident, or they were killed in the line of duty. So I have a lot of programs that I just was floating around in there. I do want to start an education series for veterans. In the works right now is the VA home loan program, which is super, super difficult and complicated. And so that's a benefit that's often left on the table with veterans. And if you served honorably, you are entitled to this benefit. But because it is so complicated and there's so much paperwork, veterans often leave that on the table. And it's a shame because this is their benefit. So if I can start educating veterans, then the veterans get the benefits that they are entitled to. That's it.
Perfect. And now next I'm going to go to Renee to explain the last line of the town common lighting.
So this past year, so the Christmas tree lighting is one of our biggest events. So many families come out, and each year we've got a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. This past year was huge. It was awesome. It was freezing, and everybody still came out. We are hoping that we can, the Jaycees did a great job lighting the poles this year. We have all the new light posts, and actually plugs, outlets are up there. And to have it professionally done with amazing lights, it just will bring so much more to the community. Everybody loves seeing the common lit up, and it'll make such a difference. And I know the uptown businesses are all trying to collaborate and do things to make the uptown a better place, especially during the holidays with decorations. The Orpheum is collaborating with us, and they're going to do like the Christmas Spectacular in conjunction with our event. So it's just going to be such a big event. And it's just a huge necessity to have those lights and have them done professionally. It'll be great.
Yeah,
Huge
I'd like to echo that, Renee. So I'm sure you know it if you've been uptown recently. The common area is starting to really come alive.
Mm-hmm.
The Foxborough Nutrition, the new bakery, Shoveltown coming soon, apartments. I think that you'll see we're kind of on the precipice of the common area becoming an extremely active place. And that Christmas time, having it be a true large community event. It's something that I know the community has talked about for a number of years, of having a professional lighting service. And not that it wasn't before, but the couple of trees with some lights look good, but the way that sort of bring it to the forefront of the community, it's something that thousands of people drive through every day, and the town should be proud of just this incredible resource and this absolute beauty of a gem, literally the gem of Foxborough as people drive through. And it's only going to get better with all these new businesses coming to the common area. So what I think is important to notice is our overall budget. So we, even though we had the increases that Ali mentioned, that I mentioned, that Renee mentioned, because of those decreases in salary and staff, we're able to keep the entire budget as a whole under that 2.5% kind of mandate, and we were able to keep it to 2.36%. So pretty proud of that. We were able to do the entire budget of $962,762. So we have a lot of lofty goals for next year. We won't go into all of them, but we have next year is going to be hopefully a changing year. I think we all thought that 2020, FY22 would be, coming out of COVID and doing things. It seems like FY23 really will be. We'll be able to have the Booth Summer Program will be able to be at full capacity. Programs here will be incredibly well attended. Allie's projecting more services for her veterans. It's just a great time to sort of take advantage of these resources in your community for those who are watching at home. I'd love to sort of entertain kind of any questions that you have. I was trying to keep it short, and I think I did a pretty good job. So any sort of questions, would love to answer them for you.
And if I could just say a couple words, this is Bill Keegan. I wanted to just, I'll start my video here, just so, because I just want to say thank you to Mark and to Ali and to Renee for this being the first time that they've made this combined presentation and under the new structure that's being proposed. And we've had to make some changes, and which I think really made sense. I think all the departments will complement each other in the services that provide going forward. This is a model that's actually not unique to Foxborough. It's actually one that's being followed pretty much around the Commonwealth now. So we're following suit on that, and not only that, we have the right mix of folks that complement each other's qualities and talents that can work really well together and make this really spectacular operation. So I did want to add just a few words on the common lighting. That's something that we've had our eye on for a number of years. But one of the things that I said to folks first, before we do that, we have to upgrade the lighting first on the common, because there simply is not electrical capability in the former situation that we had there. The system there was crumbling around us. It was a lot of it was direct bury type of a cable and lighting lines in the ground, as opposed to using conduit and modern electrical techniques to do that. We tried to fund it through the capital side a number of times, but then unfortunately we weren't able to do that. But then we reached out to our friends at Snyder Electric, who were trying to look for ways they could help the town, and we were able to successfully gain support from them to get a $150,000 grant to help offset that cost. So we were able, once that combined with about a $50,000 amount of town funding, we were able to get the common redone, all the lighting redone. The style of the lighting was done. We worked on that with a group of volunteers, including our town historian, Jack Hawthorne, who had an important role in making sure that the lighting was the right look for the common, that was consistent with the lighting that we'd had in the past and in previous attempts to try and correct that. So we had a lot of input into that process, and it worked out really, really well. And the lighting that we're using now is all LED lighting. It's all very it's all high end technology, so that it will be something that will be used for many, many years going forward. And we're very grateful for the contributions of Snyder Electric to make that happen. But I think the contribution from us going forward is $25,000, which, by the way, I think will be matched by other contributions, but from the business community, who has also indicated that they want to step forward and try and help with that, so we can really make it a spectacular celebration during the holiday season and really set Foxborough off for what it is in the downtown area, and really create a great atmosphere, as Mark pointed out earlier. So I'm actually pretty excited to see that happen. It took longer than I wanted to see it happen, but I'm really glad that it did come together. And thanks to a lot of great efforts on a lot of different people's parts to make that come true. So grateful for everybody's effort in that. Thank you.
Mark, if you want to unshare, I can see the members of the AdCom right now. I'm just getting a strip, and excuse me, we can see if they have questions.
Yeah, Mark, Dennis Keefe. I'm just curious, are you going to try to organize any trips through the senior center this year?
Yeah, so we actually, and my screen's not shared anymore, right? No, okay.
It still is. Now it's done. Now they got you done.
Okay, sounds
Keep
good.
going.
Yeah, so we actually are. So we did do some last year with great success. So we're doing once a month starting in March throughout the year. We also have one large trip going to Mackinac Island in June. So one thing we started to do differently with our larger trips, we've gone out to bid for them. So in the past, it was sort of, let's choose a company and let's go for it. Obviously, COVID changed that with the travel industry. So we're going out to bid for these trips. They bring in a lot of money. And we're making sure that we get the best trip possible for the seniors that go on them. But we are doing day trips to places in New Hampshire, down the Cape, down to Rhode Island. And then we're looking at another week-long trip, maybe in November, but then also again next spring too. So obviously we're watching the COVID really closely to figure out what is safe. If we can do some international travel like we had in the past, I'd love to do it. But we just want to make sure we're safe with the people that are going on the trips as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question maybe for Renee. It's about the town pool. And do you think it'll be open this year? I know a lot of people really miss that. So I was just wondering.
Well, it is on my top priority. I am hoping it is going to be open. Mark and I actually discussed it today. So yes, I'm going to do everything in my power to get it open, because I know that not just families need it, but it's a huge asset to our summer programs as well.
Yep. Yeah,
Raphael, on that very point, I want to just add to that comment too, that we're going to probably need some funding to actually fix the pool to make it actually more accommodating for folks to swim there, because it's been a number of years since it's been open, and I think obviously it needs some upgrades in some areas. I think the water is actually very cold, so it's not as inviting as other areas to go swim in. So I think we're going to try and look at some ways to improve upon that. Maybe even potentially leverage some of the federal money that we received recently to see if we can upgrade that and not impact our local dollars to do that. So we're going to try and be creative and try and find ways to make that work. But I do think it's time for a little bit of an investment there, and hopefully others will agree that we can actually make that a nice amenity for the community.
Yep, that would be great. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Johns, could I speak?
Yes, go ahead. People Mike, you can just call me Paul, right? That's fine.
Okay, Paul. So just to add on to Raphael's question, because I'm very confident that they are going to have the pool open this year. Next week, I'm meeting with the personnel board to discuss the seasonal wages. We are several years behind on our wages. And it's going to be important, especially when we talk about lifeguards, that we're competitive with the wages, so that we haven't invested money into our pool and done all these preparations for programs and then don't have people to staff it. So we are going to do that. And, you know, we can get a little behind on those seasonal wages because as a municipality, we are not required to meet minimum wage. But we are at a point with these 3 programs coming together that is really important that we get the best people out there and that we hire them and have them ready when the programs are ready to start for the summer. So you can expect those to go up to a competitive level for not only the pool and the booth playground staff, but also for for other seasonal positions such as our DPW laborers that we bring in for the summer for painting and light work like that.
Great.
Hey, Mark, I saw a bullet in your slides about community needs assessment, if I remember correctly. You want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, so part of one of the grants that we were able to receive through Mass General, it was a mental health preparedness grant. It was community needs assessment. If you haven't already watched last week's Board of Health meeting, or actually earlier this week, they did a fantastic job doing a community health assessment, very similar to that. So a lot of the data that was in that presentation, but we're really looking to figure out what are the needs in the community. They touched on a little bit, and I know Matt talked about it a little bit before this, but what do people need? We know anecdotally that they need access to affordable housing, easy transportation, close doctor's offices. We really need to have that in data form, so that way as we move forward and apply for more grants in the future, I'm able to say, here's what the community has shown that they actually need. Here's the data to back that up, and then hopefully we can have funding sources from grants too.
Thank you. Other questions from the group?
Yeah, this is Marlo. I'd like to just say thanks to the presenters for the explanation of the programs, and especially a lot of the pictures that went a long way. And the enthusiasm that a lot of the folks showed is clearly we've got some strong people running these programs, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll answer for Renee and Allie. You have 3 people who absolutely love their job, love coming to Foxborough every day, and love really giving back to the community. I'd be hard pressed to find 3 other people that really loved it as much as we do.
Yeah, I would add to that. Y'all are pretty clearly the day-to-day heart of the community, and the work you do is great. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So
Real
Mark,
quick,
Allie.
Can I ask a real quick newbie question?
Sure.
The 75% reimbursement from the state for the ordinary benefits, where does that show up? Just as a revenue line.
Where does it show up as far as where does it come back to? It comes back to the free cash.
Free cash, so that's up in the revenue side of the...
Up in the revenues, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Enough said.
It's a good question. All right, thanks to the presenters. Thank you for being here.
Thank
Mr.
you
Chairman,
very much. Really appreciate it.
Elaborate on that, on Mike's question.
Sure.
That money actually comes in on the state cherry sheet. So it's a reimbursement to the town, and then gets turned around and puts in, it gets returned to our, as Allie points out, it goes back into our funds at the end of the year. So we don't really typically receive it until towards the end of the fiscal year. So it ends up in free cash, but then it gets turned around and puts back into the budget for the next year.
And just for everybody's benefit, Bill, cherry sheet is because they used to come on pink pieces of paper?
That's correct. So,
okay.
So that's the state funding that comes to the state from the town each year from the state budget. So it's something that doesn't show up as a revenue source and necessarily in town on the town's list, but it's one of the state funding contributions that we get from the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
It's good. Thank you. Thanks again, Mark, Allie, and Renee.
Appreciate it very much.
So we're on to the third section of our trifecta, library. And I see Colin there. I see Kevin. So I don't know if one of you could share your screen or if you would plan to do that.
I think, Kevin, are you able to share while I do some bit of narration?
I am. Let's see if I can pull it off.
Great. Well, I'll start chatting while Kevin pulls it up. Just to introduce myself to everyone, I'm Colin Ernst. I'm chair of the board of trustees for the Boyden Library, and joined by Kevin Penders, who many of you know, who serves as vice chair. And I believe Kathy Belharney was going to join us as well. Kathy serving as our interim. There's Kathy. Hi, Kathy. Serving as our interim director. I appreciate the opportunity to walk through the budget with you this evening and share some of our thoughts and answer some of your questions. We had a good chance to sit down with Dennis and Mike last week and talk a bit as well. I'm going to focus on really the major highlight because our budget is fairly similar and fairly in line with last year with one major change. So I'm going to focus our time on that and then ask Kevin to maybe give a bit more detail into the budget build and answer some of those detailed questions. And the major item for us is the young adult librarian. And as some of you may recall, we've brought this forward in previous years, and Manny Leitz, our prior director, gave an in-depth presentation about the young adult library. And I'll just highlight a couple points on that just to reiterate why this is important to the library. We have outstanding children's programming at the library, but many of those young patrons, after they've grown from children and become teens, we don't see them again until they come back with their own children years later for whether Goose on the Loose or programming as adults who have their own children. And one of the reasons they don't come back is we don't have programming for them. This is a significant segment of our library population that goes unserved because there's not a specialized librarian like we have for adults, like we have for children. So we want to be able to serve those students. And this young adult librarian is a specialized skill. If any of you have teenagers like I do, you know that connecting with young people of this age is a very, very specialized skill. Finding activities and content that is of interest to them keeps them wanting to learn and read and engage. And particularly at this very vulnerable point in their development as young teens, need somewhere to go and connect. And we believe this is a very important part of our library community, again, that is unserved. And last thing I'll share that when we built the library, there was a dedicated space built for a young adult focus, but that space has gone largely unused, mostly because the library hasn't had a dedicated professional to focus on the young adult population. And we have not added any headcount since the library was built. And this has been an important priority for us as trustees of the library, feel very strongly, as do the staff, in the importance of serving this segment of the library population. So as Kevin will walk through in a moment, we've made a number of trade-offs in this year's budget to be sure that we can come in below the requested amount in terms of percentage increase, but be able to staff a part-time young adult librarian, again, to serve all members of our community equally with our services. And this is a part-time role that is being proposed in the budget. Kevin, anything you want to add or you want to dive into some of the detail?
I mean, I'm happy to do that. I think the only thing I would add here is obviously we didn't do this lightly. We do have other funding mechanisms and resources available to us. So while some of the things that we normally would put on the O&M side of the budget, you're going to see we walked back out on. The goal in doing so was really because of the priority that the board unanimously felt. So all 6 members unanimously felt that this was a priority for us going forward, as we have raised it in prior years. We worked with Town Hall on that, and thanks to Bill Keegan and George Semia and their teams to help us get to a number. Ultimately, as we walk through this budget, you will see we are under the 2.5% request from Town Hall. We are not adding headcount from a benefits and perspective in so doing, although I do think that we are anticipating that the need for this position will be such that we will be back in the future in better economic times talking about this not as a part-time position but as a full-time position.
Hey, Kevin, I
look forward
really
to being able to back that up. Sure, Paul,
I apologize for it. Is this the most current version of the budget?
This is the version of the budget that I have.
Okay.
So it may not be the most current version, but I believe the numbers should be the same. I don't know if it's the pretty version compared to what you may be looking at. So if I don't have this is the one that we sent to Town Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, the numbers in the book are different. That's why Paul's raising.
Yes.
Okay. So then if somebody else wants to share those numbers, I'll be happy to address questions based on that. This is the version I have that we voted on. So I'm happy to take my shared screen off and defer to somebody else's shared screen if that
On the
makes more
top,
sense.
on the top segment, Kevin, it's just the 21,000 is now 26 on the new one, I think. Library pages.
Right. Mr. Chairman, if you look in the share box on your screens, Maria Almodovar has actually posted the most recent version.
I've tried double clicking this. and it made my PC do funny things. And
so if you double click on it, then it'll say save, then save it, and then you click on it again, it'll come right up.
Okay.
So would it be easier if I took my screen off share?
Yeah, maybe put Marie have it put up on hers if she could do it.
Yeah, Marie, can you
do that, Marie?
That required 3 operations from me, Bill, and that's like too many technologically.
There we go.
There it is.
Okay. So then if does it make sense for me to walk through that at this point?
Yes.
Okay. So what you'll see on the salaries line items are you'll see principally an increase in the professional librarian line of $30,000, $30,007 to be exact. That is associated with the part-time young adult librarian that Colin was just describing. There's no other costs associated with that. That is a pure salary position. It would be 18 hours a week, targeted towards event and programming for that gap period or gap age group where we lose most of our young patrons. And as Colin mentioned, they don't come back until they're bringing their own kids in. So it is a huge unmet and untapped potential for our library services, and one that we know in talking to the high school librarian and talking to other communities that have one, and in talking to library sciences, sort of as things evolve, people actually can go to school for this now, which they didn't do 30 years ago. It's actually its own curriculum and degree. So it's an opportunity for us to tap into someone there to really bring in that new unmet need. So that's where that $30,000 comes from. The other librarian positions that are in here, the other increases, actually, so the other increases in the librarian level 2 are associated with step increases. There's no new hires there. Those are just associated with people, years of seniority. And for budget and for union negotiation purposes. And then there's the senior librarian assistant and the assistant clerk typist. So that's, and then the assistant clerk, I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble following the lines here as I'm looking at this version versus the one that I have on my own screen. And the department administrator. So the department administrator is currently held by Pam Riccio. She's working as the coordinator, administrator, and basically right hand to the director, as did Deb Volpini for years prior to her. These are all of these other increases not associated with the 30,000 are longevity increases. If we go down to, so that concludes my comments on salaries. It's not a particularly sexy salary story. Most of them are associated, everything but the YA position is associated with standard steps and longevity service associated changes. The one thing that I should note that we did do with respect to the library director position, the very first line item, and I should have handled this first, you'll see no change from 2022 to what we're proposing for this year's budget. Rationale for that is normally there would be an increase in that line item as well associated with a step for the director. Manny Leet, as many of you already know, has left the library. Kathy Bell-Harney is operating in an interim fashion for us, to which we appreciate. But we decided to hold that line item steady, not knowing what the salary of an incoming full-time director would be. but assuming that it would not be somebody with the same level of seniority that Manny had. And so we set Manny's salary as a ceiling. And so that's what that reflects there, which is why you don't see any changes. So then if there are no, maybe I should pause there and see if there are any questions associated with salaries before I move on to expenses.
Yeah, I have one question with respect to the young adult librarian. Now, you're projecting a part-time person for that. Speak to the viability of getting a fully qualified person for a part-time job.
Well, my short answer is I won't know until I have the ability to post it. But that being said, I have every reason to believe that we would, as a library, be successful in finding someone young, new to the degree, probably not somebody with a long career as a young adults librarian, but somebody who may be looking for that flexibility, or somebody who is new out of librarian school who wants to get the experience. So those are certainly the candidates we think we would be likely to get. There is a retention issue, as far as I'm concerned, with respect to being able to keep somebody who is new and young and looking to get that experience if we don't serve it as a full-time position. But until I start losing people who are looking for a more permanent full-time position, I can't offer you experience on that until I have a chance to hire them.
Jack, I can just add to that Kevin's points are actually well taken. That you may get somebody that's just coming out of school, looking to land somewhere to get some experience for a few years. But the converse is also true. You may get a more senior person sometimes just looking to do part-time work towards their second half of their career. And the reason I say that is because now the state has actually increased the number of hours a retiree can work from, I think it was about 1,000 hours or 960 up to about 1,200 hours now. So it's possible you might be able to get somebody to do that work on a part-time level. It might fit into their retirement plans. It might be able to fit pretty well, actually. So it's possible you get something on both extremes, but I do think that ultimately you'll see some movement in that position, as I think it's no secret to anyone here that the attempt is to at least get the position started and see where it goes and see if it takes off as everybody hopes it does, and then the support can build for making it a full-time position. I'll just tell you that my feeling about that being for adding this position in, the only reason this is the only new position I actually added, I supported in the budget, it was because they made such a great case for it and I do believe it is an important need for the library, that it made sense to me. And not only that, it's a good service for the community overall. So and they were able to reduce other areas of the budget in order to make that happen.
Yeah, this is something they were looking for last year as well.
And the year before.
And yes, so the reality is when we say, yes, go ahead on the 18-hour a week, we should realize that it's really, I'll say the camel's nose under the tent, if you will. It's really, the intent is a full-time job in a year or two from now. And whether that's good or bad, whether you agree with that or not, that's where the direction is heading.
I don't have any disagreement there at all. I think that the long-term plan for this position would be a full-time position, no question. That's certainly where the trustees would put the priority of that. That being said, we're library trustees. We have a long history of trying to work with the town and with the town's priorities and with AdCom. Sunday hours didn't come about in a fashion that allowed us to just say, this is what we're doing and full steam ahead. We had to do that incrementally as well. The renovation was an incremental process before that actually became the full renovation. So I think, we appreciate the economic circumstances of the town and where it sits. We don't make this ask very lightly. And I think if we came back to you next year and said, we'd really like it to be a full-time position, and there are circumstances where that's not viable, we're not going to revoke everybody's borrowing privileges. We're not that obstinate.
I do have a question.
Kevin, I just want to make sure that I'm not speaking for it or against it.
Nope.
I'm simply saying this is the reality of what you're looking for.
I am 100, and I am
and-
100% agreeing with you.
Yeah, and the one thing I'd add is, the trustees don't have a specific timeline on that. So to your point, Jack, yes, we want to see it in the coming years, this be full-time, but we don't have a specific vision on this 1 or 2 years away. As Kevin said, when it's the right thing for the town and the town is in a position to fund this, we would seek that. But again, we're not setting a hard timeline on it, just to be clear.
I have a question on the evolution of this position, just a brief question. So have we done somewhat of a study with like towns in Massachusetts who may have started with a part-time position for a young adult, and how successful were they? How long did it take? To go from part-time to full-time maybe, and what was the usage? I taught high school for a lot of years, and it's interesting. I think depends on the community. In urban communities, you have a lot more neighborhood libraries, so a lot of those kids, go in there, use it as a place to socialize, use the programs, use it even for respite. I'm just wondering if we've done a little bit of checking around, with like communities like Foxborough and how successful they were. So, to make it eventually a full-time position.
So I think the short answer is yes, we have. The longer answer is yes, we have, but I don't have that information in front of me because Manny took it with him when he left. And so we haven't been able to get our hands on it in anticipation of this meeting. That was a goal that we did have.
Yeah.
But the reality is we are somewhat hamstrung. Manny did put on a presentation about this last year. Dennis and Mike and Colin and I talked about this in our sort of one-on-one prior to this discussion this evening.
Right.
And we had hoped to be able to resuscitate that presentation, which Manny used in the past 2 years, to do exactly, Rafaela, what you were asking about.
Right.
I know it exists, but I don't have it.
If I can jump in, Kevin, Manny presented this twice and made
Correct.
a very compelling presentation and was really supported by very good data to Raphael's point. It was really a victim of COVID the past 2 years. Strong support from the AdCom, but really a victim of COVID in terms of being able to fund it.
In fact, I think I won't speak for AdCom, I'm not on it, but I do believe that pre-COVID, we were on our way to this being done as something that would have been done 2 years ago.
I have a question. Since this is a part-time position, has any thought been given to possibly taking a student who is studying this in college and maybe using that person as an intern to come in for a year and, work on the program, and maybe you can get an idea of how successful it would be. And that way you don't have a problem with the part-time aspect.
Colin, I don't know if you want to answer that, but I have a thought.
Yeah, feel free to go first if you like,
Okay.
but I can hop in too.
So first thing I would want to just make clear is this is not a college degree, Sharon, in response to your comment. This is a Master's of Library Science in Young Adult Services. So this would be a master's type program.
Right, but people going to school for their masters do internships as well.
They do. And if that's the way we would be able to fill this position, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But there are paid internships and unpaid internships, and we don't have a staffed position to be able to ask them to undertake it at this point.
And then I'd also add, Kevin, I think I like the idea of the intern and be able to tap into some available skill and knowledge. We want someone to come in and to the best we're able to have them plant some roots and build a program that will have some longevity. And our hope is we can retain that person at some point down the road as a long-term role. But we believe very strongly about the value and want someone to come in who has studied this, is ready to make a commitment and work, albeit in a part-time capacity, to build a program that will engage our young people.
And not be someone who will cycle out in 14 weeks.
If I can just add to that, just a thought that I've been working with Northeastern University to try and build a co-op support for positions in municipal government in general. And there's a lot of support for them to do that at this point in time. So the thought of getting a student to do that, maybe at the college or graduate level, but I think you'd have to really work with Simmons College for something like that, because they have a pretty extensive master's degree program. But it's something. Certainly an interesting thought. It's not. I think especially if it's going to be done. This position is destined to become full time at some point, and maybe it's a good idea to. You might be able to get somebody to part time the position while they're finishing up their degree, with the potential of them falling into the position in a year or two, so that you maybe sort of almost like have a trial basis with an individual who might be able to give you some good value during the interim period.
Appreciate the recommendations, and even something for us to think about more broadly in our staffing in terms of the available labor. If this is approved in the budget, we'd like to post the role and take a look at the available talent. And as Kevin said, this is a dedicated field of study, and we have enthusiasm and optimism about the candidate pool out there. So appreciate the recommendation. Something we should really consider in our staffing plan in general.
Just to reiterate one thing that was said earlier, I think Kevin said that there was a lot of support 2 years ago. I found all the files. We had letters of recommendation from Mr. Barrows and Mr. Feeney, among others, and from the head of the Mass Library System, we had all sorts of stuff. So one, I can send that to you if you want. I don't know if you need it, but two, I think it's fair to say we spent a lot of time on this 2 years ago working through it. One of the things that Manny talked about was going to other libraries and seeing what programs they had. I think we actually saw a list of potential programs. Just so you know, one of the questions we did get, in my memory, is that how will you know within a year whether it's successful or not? And the response was essentially, we'll see people using the program. So just keep that in mind. A year from now, the AdCom, you may get that question, which is, you've had this in position for, well, it'll be less than a year. It'll be about a half year by then, or 3/4 of the year. Like, how are you making the assessment, to Jack's point, to go to full time? Because you will get that question.
So I would just comment, that's all great, and thank you for reminding us of that. Along with that, I would say, we will make obviously our own internal assessment before we even broach the subject of whether we want to try to make a more full-time the experiment of this year, if we get approval to go forward and do it.
Yep.
And if we feel like the experiment hasn't run long enough, then we would. Then we wouldn't come back to you and ask you for a full-time position yet. I think
fair point.
That is certainly something that we will litmus on our end as well. And we'll have some challenges with that. We'll have a new director. We would, in theory, have a new young adult librarian at that point on a part-time basis. I do want to note Christine Igo Freeman is on this call as well as a member of the trustees, and she just put into the chat, as a person who has graduated from Simmons College Library and Information Science, this position is meant as a job, not an internship. It's a field of study, and several area libraries already have young adult librarians. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Christine, because she actually is credentialed for library sciences, and I am not. So it's as somebody who has come through Simmons, her perspective there is helpful to us and invaluable to us as members of the board. So I think, Paul, your point is very well taken. If we come back next year and say this needs to be a full-time position, and we can't explain to you the why and beyond where we sit today, then we haven't done our job. So that would be my feedback on that. We may come back to you next year and say it hasn't been in place long enough for us to be able to do that. We'd like to continue to do it on a part-time basis. Hopefully the AdCom will be supportive of that as a recommendation, if that's where we end up coming down. Should I move on to O&M?
Yeah.
Okay. So looking at the schedule that's here up on the shared screen, I want to note really the two big deductions that you see. The first one being in office supplies of $10,000 from our original, from last year's budget, and then the other one being in audiovisual And I know there are some other changes further down, but let's hit these first. The first one, the $10,000. Last year's budget, we went before town hall with the request for, and town meeting with the request for a copier. We needed a new copier, and it was such that it was more economically sound for us to purchase it rather than continue to lease. And we received approval to do that, and we purchased a copier. In fact, we need another one. We have a couple of copiers in the building. They're all beyond their useful life, except for the one that we bought last year. And so we were just planning to roll forward the ask for a second. In looking at our priorities as trustees, I can't emphasize this enough, the young adult librarian priority is our singular priority. And so what we did was we looked at areas in the operations and maintenance budget where we could cut to help get to that $30,000 number, so that we could achieve the YA position. This $10,000 hit is associated with not purchasing that new copier or coming up with private funding for others to from others to purchase that copier, and so it doesn't come from the expense of the town. Dennis asks whether or not Sunday hours have already started. And the answer is yes. We run Sunday hours from October through May or April, May. So we are underway on Sunday hours because that's just our normal cycle. And then I'm sorry, there was a $5,000 adjustment. Whoever just flipped the page, thank you. For audio visual, as we discussed with Dennis and Mike, there are a number of different online platforms that we use currently that our patrons draw great value out of. We were looking at continuing some of those, and in other areas expanding some of those. So there's $5,000 here, and then if I could have you to turn the page. Okay, so that's not, I don't see it here, but there's $5,000 here, and we had another ask originally that doesn't show up on your budget because it's not a new line item. There was a streaming services request initially, and what we put to town hall for another $13,000 would have accommodated a number of those changes of expanding the services on the digital and suite. So things like Overdrive you may use, or Canopy, or Canva, and there's other ones that I can't pronounce.
Friedel, yeah.
Friedel, thank you. Hoopla, exactly. See, this is the fan participation portion of my show. So it's perfect. You all fell for it. So if you know and can say those services, then you're using them. And if you're using them, they come at a cost that we are paying through audiovisual or digital electronic or what would have otherwise been streaming services. And so we've scaled those back. I want to be very clear, we're not scaling back the existing services we are offering. We are scaling back more broadly, adding to those services at this time so that we can work within our existing resources or with the friends to talk about other ways to finance some of those services to continue to continue to offer the services that our patrons know about and expect, and also to expand those where necessary in a way that doesn't undermine our ability to make the ask for the young adult librarian. What is the other adjustment? The other adjustment is $2,500 here associated with meetings and conferences. The reality of the situation is we'd love to be able to, and we very much feel the priority to train and keep current our existing staff. And there are a number of conferences, whether that's through the ALA or the MLA, the American Library Association, or the Massachusetts Library Association, or other things through our sales network, which is the network for which we do all of our circulation and sharing of services. So if you want to get a book and we don't have it, but Fall River does, for example, they're in our sales network. We can go and get those resources from other communities and bring them in. So we want, we want sales, we want our folks to be able to take advantage of those opportunities that are out there. Obviously, we're still not quite sure what that looks like in the COVID and post-COVID world. So rather than saying we wanted to dedicate $5,000 to that, we felt it was more likely reasonable and appropriate for us to scale that request back, and we halved it so that it's more than we requested last year, as we expected people will be able to go out more into the world, but it's not as robust until such time as we have a better sense of what the world looks like for them to go out into. And so those things combined bring us to a total budget of 2.54 on this. My original numbers had 2.39. So where the adjustments are on this, I will defer obviously to the overall budget increase of 2.54 from Town Hall. And those are the methodologies behind the cuts that we made and the rationale for why. Happy to answer any questions.
So I'll open it up to other questions. Go ahead. Oh, thought I heard somebody. Marie, I think you can unshare. Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
All right. So any other questions from the group? All right. So Colin, Kevin, thank you for presenting. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
And I think that's it. So have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You too.
Thank you. Great job.
Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate the help.
I'll add one quick thing. I don't know if the library folks are still on, but I had mentioned that the seasonal pay increase we're going to be putting in front of the personnel board next week. And there's one library position on there, and that's the library page position. That's usually a high school level position. They may have already gotten off, and I missed my chance to advertise it, but that's it.
Well, if they were still on, I would tell you my son did that job, and it's a fantastic job. And oddly, he also, Mike, told me about the what he called the ghost room, the one room for youth adult services that really had not much going on in it. So, all right. So that's it for the budget part of the agenda. Real quick, so I sent the minutes out a little while back. There was one correction or emendation to someone who'd asked a question. I did amend that. So the minutes reflected that change. So any questions or comments on the minutes? That's good. So does somebody want to make a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
Nice, Jay. All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor, I'm going to have you raise your hands again. Just put your hand up right where the camera can see it. All right. And then Sharon's abstaining, I will note, for whoever's taking minutes because she was not there. All right.
I need to abstain as well. I wasn't at the last meeting.
Oh, then you were an abstention as well. See, this is why they tell me to do a roll call on this. Hey, so we can open it up for general discussion. Bill, I'm going to put you in the spot. I meant to text you earlier today. I was going to ask you how the town warrant was shaping up and if there was anything you could share. I know it's not closed yet, but we're starting to get to the date.
Hi, Paul. I think Kevin wants to say something.
Oh, sorry about that, Kevin.
No, not at all. I left. It's my fault.
Okay.
And I apologize for.
Oh, your hand's up. Look at that. You're waving goodbye.
I was voting. That's just. So, I had one other point that I wanted to leave for you all with respect to our budget, and I guess I just wanted Colin off the line before I did it. We have two masters that we serve with respect to three, really, with respect to the budget that we put forward as library trustees. And I just wanted to make sure I reemphasize this as a point. We usually do it, and I had forgotten to do it before I got off the phone. Number one, obviously, is the building. We take whatever budget town votes on and we implement it to the best of our abilities to serve the patrons. That's number one. Number two is the town, and with a mindfulness towards what the town's obligations are and the opportunities to work within that. Number three is the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. And I just wanted to make sure I emphasize this. We have a statutory obligation to grow our budget on an annual basis by 2.5%. And if we do not do that, we run the risk of being decertified by the state. So, which comes with a whole host of penalties, and that we lose all of our borrowing privileges, our hours get reduced. So there's a number. Our state aid is drastically cut. So I just want to make sure I put into perspective that we don't lightly make any inflation changes in these budgets, right? We try to be very mindful of what we need, of what the town needs, and we also are mindful of what our obligation to our state commitment is. And I apologize for not saying that before, but that is why you see a year-over-year change. And if AdCom were to, in a lean year, look at the budget and say, the library doesn't need this, whatever we don't spend, we will gladly return to the general fund. But if we do not appropriate it for the purposes of library operations, we do have that other budgetary master of our state certification. So I just wanted to reemphasize why it looks like the way it does.
I'm glad you did that, Kevin. I should have thrown that in as a reminder, because every year I hear that. That's a good reminder of that sort of third rail of budgeting. So thank you for hanging around, raising your hand as you did, and updating us on that.
My mother raised me right. There you go. Thank you. I am done, and I apologize for re-injecting myself into.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. So, Bill, I was busy putting you on the spot for a minute.
Sure. So no problem at all. So, and thanks for Kevin for clarifying that point too. It's a good point to make. So I think it's with respect to the warrant, it's interesting because it's a little different than what it has in previous years, because we recall we did a number of different zoning issues at the fall town meeting in November, and everything passed for the most part. There was one housing adjustment issue for adding an apartment onto an individual's home. That was defeated, so that didn't go forward to the state. But then we had several zoning and bylaw changes that were approved. But what we later discovered after the meeting was held and done was that we had properly sent all the information. The town is not at fault in this case. So what happened is the information was sent properly to the Chronicle, and unfortunately, the Chronicle didn't print it for a notice, so it didn't meet a notice requirement. So it's the first time I've ever seen this happen in 40 years, by the way. So this is not something that happens very often. But I will tell you that it does raise the question that in terms of the approval from the state, once those actions are taken. So we're working with the state to try and figure that out for them and try and help them get through that. But we don't have an answer as to whether or not we have to go back to town meeting and just revote those 6 or 7 articles, or even 8 articles that have to be looked at again. So that would make it shouldn't take a lot of controversy, because none of those items were very controversial at all. But it just would add more articles to the warrant, which would make it instead of like a 27 or 28 article warrant, it would then go down to about a 16 or 17 articles or so. So it's so we're going to have to look at that. My math's off a little bit, but I was thinking that the number might get down to around 16 or 17 articles. We did have one come in today. We actually have 3 articles that are being submitted by petition. One is for a sewer easement that is actually okay, because it's actually an area that we think would probably make sense to do, and I think we're very supportive of it. But another one is for a sidewalk on South Street, which will require some discussion and consideration, because we're invoking on a sidewalk improvement plan, and at this point in time, we're not looking to expand sidewalks, looking to at least take care of the ones we got. And so, adding a sidewalk would awfully add cost to the town. That's something that we're not looking to spend in that direction at this point in time. But certainly, it's a consideration that has to be made at town meeting. It was petitioned properly, so it has to be considered by the town. The third one that was petitioned today was was by a group of individuals who feel very strongly about zoning changes and if how they may impact residential zoning, and where in fact they felt so strongly that they indicated in their article that if in fact a residential zoning change were to be made, it would have to would require that a notice be sent to every single residential home in the town. That's significant because that would mean that not only would it be a costly thing to do, but it would also require a significant amount of effort to do as well, and make it very difficult. The state doesn't even require that kind of effort, since that would be an extraordinary measure for consideration. But it is something that was properly submitted. So again, that will have to be up for consideration, and your board will look at it as well in terms of overall evaluation. So I think I just to let you know that that's a cost consideration that would have to be looked at, as well as the fact that just the pure logistics of doing such a thing would be a challenge. So
go ahead.
Okay, and then beyond that, it's your standard articles for consideration. We'll meet on the capital items. We're having a conversation tomorrow to see if we can use some of the federal money for paying some of the capital items and come up with a strategy to present before the Board of Selectmen and the AdCom, as well as I think the school committee as well. But we're gonna look at ways in which we can spend the money properly. The whole federal money situation was complicated by a number of factors, some of which have been resolved through efforts that Foxborough made along with our state delegation, assist from our congressional delegation, as well as our U.S. senators and as well as the MMA. So we were actually helpful, appreciative of that help. But then we realized there's a different challenge that they posed that they didn't address, which is going to be addressed tomorrow with the U.S. Treasury Department. So we're hoping that it gets fixed in the right direction. We'll be able to use the money as freely as I think the original intent was, to provide us the opportunity to use to help replace the revenue which was lost during the pandemic. So that's a summary of where we're at. It's not been easy. It's been very, very complex to deal with some of the issues that we're handling right now. That, coupled with most recent concerns over the housing crisis or the housing reform bill that's been passed through the state, saying that every city and town who is next to an MBTA station or has MBTA services are required to have a zone for multifamily homes and that zone would have to include a density of something like 15 units per acre. And so that's extraordinarily dense. I think the most densely constructed home complex in Foxborough is 8 units per acre. So and that was recently done over by 140 and that development over there. So I will tell you that's a challenge for us, and I expressed that concern to Secretary Keneally and to the governor's office that's a challenge for us. I've also spoken with our state senator and U.S. and state representative about that issue. So hopefully that we can get a change in the legislation about that issue as well.
So under that bill, sorry, Bill, under that bill, we're listed as an adjacent community, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we're not considered to be a full MBTA consideration community at this point. So the density does go down a little bit, but with that in mind, the town has actually already embarked upon a pilot program with the train, so the train could be coming to Foxborough, and that pilot program is still in the works. So we could easily become an MBTA community in the coming months if that's successful. So what that means is that it would mean that we wouldn't be eligible for certain grant opportunities through the state if we don't comply with that. So I think that's the challenge. That's something we're trying to battle on the state level to see if we can actually get some relief on that point. Because Foxborough has done a pretty good job of managing the housing crisis, even though housing costs continue to rise. It's a market consideration, not more than it is anything. We're 35% diverse in terms of our housing types of units, and as well as the fact we're 12.5% affordable. So, which is, one of the higher standards in the state. So I think for our size, we've done a lot, but we're not getting any kind of relief on that point. So more to be talked about, more to be dealt with on that front.
And then there's a pretty short timeline for coming up with a plan for that, right?
That's right. They're looking. It's actually laid out. It'll be over a couple of years. There's deadlines by the end of 22, 23, and 24. Okay. So it is. The wheels are already in motion on that front. But again, I think I have several of my colleagues in Norfolk County, the Management Association, are all expressing the same concerns that I am as well. So, and we're not alone in this one.
And just so everybody's clear, it doesn't require you to build them; it requires you to zone them, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And if you don't zone it, then and quite honestly, I firmly believe, knowing the community the way I do, that density of that level would have a very difficult time passing muster at town meeting. Just knowing the community the way I do, it would be very difficult to gather that level of support, which would even be. I believe that the new standard is that it would only require a majority vote. But having said that, I think you would still have a difficult time gathering muster for support for that.
I think that's fair. And I apologize for just worrying about little technical issues, but can I go back to the zoning articles? Sure. So all of them passed, not by a small margin, but all of them but accessory apartment passed by a huge margin, right?
Right, that's correct.
Is there any way to introduce them technically as a group, or are we going to have to read them out? Do you think, if we can't get this straightened out by town meeting, are we going to be reading them all out individually again, do you think? Or
I think we may have to.
Okay.
It's to be determined, Paul, but I think we may have to. But I think the idea would be to try and put them up front instead of before you even do the budget, and just get them out of the way. Okay. More of a technical thing, and have them voted pretty quickly to get them out of the way. But it's just more of a technical requirement, which is really unfortunate. Everybody here was like, we were like shocked that I've never seen that happen, where a newspaper just simply didn't print what you asked them to do. They just missed it. So.
And it's, it scared me when I heard about it, Bill, because I thought, oh heck, was I supposed to also publish in print? It turns out I'm not, but you had to be published in print.
Yeah, that's right.
Or not you, but
it's actually in the state statute for us to do that. And again, we sent it to the newspaper. They just didn't print it. So.
Okay. So I'll open it up to other questions. I was just trying to get some logistics hammered out there.
Happy to help any way I can.
Yeah, I don't know that we have any questions. All right. Any other topics to bring up before we make a motion for adjournment? Okay. All right. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Okay. We can hang here as long as y'all want. I'm taking Eric over there. Eric, there's your motion. Where's my second? Okay. All in favor, raise your hand.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll adjourn. Thanks so much, Bill, for that walkthrough, by the way.
No problem. Have a good night, everybody. Good to see you all.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next week.